Hi, everybody. I'm Alistair. 8 feet to my left is the amazing Marguerite.
Hi.
She'll be in the chat with you tonight. And before we go any further, let me explain how things are going to work. We have a show for you in three sections. The first one is our opening monologue, which is just a chance for you to get relaxed and situated, get your drinks, get your food, anything you need. And this week's opening monologue is a little bit special, and we'll get to that why in a moment. Then there'll be the main body of the show, which this week is, I'm so excited to say, an interview with the incredible Ursula Vernon, the author of A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, which we finished a couple of weeks ago. Ursula has very kindly agreed to come on, and we will be talking about the book and all sorts of other stuff as well. And Ursula will also be reading the opening monologue. Then we're planning on opening the floor to you, so if you have any questions, that would be great. And after that, there'll be a little bit of closing shenanigans, and then off we go. So, before we go any further, I should introduce Ursula.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Whenever you're ready.
Which button?
Here, I got it.
Okay. We have a stream deck and a virtual stream deck now. Hi, Ursula. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you. And thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Anytime. I mean, I'd give you organs if you needed them, man.
Like
Maybe not
Wednesday.
my organ, somebody's organ.
Of course, not just your own.
Thank you so much. You're going to be reading today's opening monologue, so I'll just explain what that is to people. This is from The Full Lid, which is my weekly pop culture newsletter. And this is a piece about a video game called Concrete Genie. So, over to you.
All right. And I should say that I am reading someone else's words. I have not actually played this game, but I am intrigued by the review. Concrete Genie is one of the most beautiful video games I've ever played. It's also one of the most confounding. Several days out from finishing it, I think that may be the point. You play Ash, an at first carefully ungendered teenager in the broken-down fishing town of Denska. Some time ago, Denska was hit by an oil spill, and it's like the town itself is stained. Everything is dark, perpetually bathed in the dirty yellow offset sodium lamplight of 2 a.m. No one around but you and a group of bullies. Well, and the ghost in the lighthouse. Ash stumbles across Luna, a friendly spirit who gives him, I guess we're gendering him now, a magic brush. That was me, it's not good. Empowered by Ash's sketches, Luna sends Ash out to bring light back into Denska. Literal light as you climb and explore the town, using your art to light the town's lamps and bring it literally and metaphorically to life. As an artistic kid, words, not images, but still, who grew up in a small fishing town, this game plays one of my tunes. Ooh, there's a screenshot. It's a pretty cool screenshot. You can't see it, but trust me, cool screenshot. You can paint anything in your sketchbook, and the game organically weaves in collecting more in a way that feels fun. Your sketches include snowflakes, icicles, flowers, some gorgeous, huge neon mushrooms, clouds, and apples, and all sorts of other things. Nearly every wall in the town is your canvas. For every wall you spray paint, more lights go on. The more lights there are, the more you progress, the better your art becomes. Creativity and personal growth, art and renovation and societal health, all wrapped up in a magic paintbrush and the just achingly beautiful design. That still above is one of the walls I painted. The art is a carefully designed precision tool, freeing you from the actual design, but enabling and encouraging your composition. With a few exceptions, you can draw what you want. I drew lots of suns, trees, apples, and lightning and waterfalls. My genies loved it. See the amiable red chap on the right of the screen? That's one of your genies. You need them from time to time to do things like blow doors open, burn through obstacles, or power electrical systems. The genies are the literal and metaphorical heart of the game. Ash's art made into a tool who also happens to be an adorable grovel monster who likes apples. You can even summon the genies to you and watch as they run around landscaped walls on an exuberant number of legs, occasionally with jaunty hats. They are adorable and worth the price of the game all by themselves. There's another screenshot. Had Concrete Genie just done all of this, it would be a beautiful, strangely elegant and gentle game. It tries for more and delivers in a gutsy way. The third act changes gears dramatically, twice. First off, several genies are corrupted and you have to chase them down and rescue them. Not kill, not tame, rescue. Aided by the very bullies who, by this stage, you know are kids who are as hurt and damaged and abandoned as you. Concrete Genie wears its heart on its backpack, and there are few more directly emotional experiences in gaming than creeping towards a genie before the controller starts rumbling again. You lean forward, you whisper, "It's okay, buddy." And when the genie finally shakes off the darkness and returns to their exuberant colors, it feels like a huge weight off your shoulders. It changes up again in the final scenes. The climactic battle with the last genie is a standard three-stage boss fight order of operations puzzle that sees you have to activate three magic crystals, avoid attacks, fight off minions, use the right brush style to lower the genie's shield, keep your own health up, and eventually rescue the genie. It's very tough, one of those moments in video games where you just wash ashore after 2 hours, confused and annoyed with sore thumbs. You preach, man, preach. Push past it. It's worth it. The ending ties everything and everyone together. The fate of Denska, its children, what's implied to be its pair of guardian spirits all participate in a moment that's cathartic, conclusive, and also a pause. There's still work to be done, still places to save, but not quite yet, because after spending the entire game focusing on art, the final minutes focus on the artist. Ash is invited to play basketball with the ex-bullies. They assume he'd rather paint. Ash is given male pronouns by this point. He looks at Luna, who smiles and shoos him away, and they hug. Then Ash runs off with his new friends. The game's message is laid bare, and I struggled to not audibly cry on the live stream. Because the message is this: you're more than your art. You're enough. Go have some fun, too. A message that lands center mass in July. Without the janky third act, without the sudden combat mechanics, that wouldn't land as hard as it does. With them, it gives Concrete Genie's ending a resonating sense of conquering creative block, personal confidence, societal pressures, and occasional grovel monsters to just be you. Because you're enough. In 2020, I suspect this hits even harder than it was designed to. I know it makes time spent with the game absolutely worthwhile, even the last fight. Concrete Genie is a PS4 exclusive right now, and if you have the capacity to play it, you should.
That is. I'm never reading my words aloud again. Thank you so much. That was amazing.
Glad to help, and now I want a PS4 because that really does sound amazing.
It's a lovely game. It's really, really cool. Are we good?
Yeah, I just heard a little bit of echo. Sorry.
Fantastic. Okay, let's talk about A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. Because
yes,
I think
that is a book.
I think we should just rip the Band-Aid off straight away because the chat has a controversy, and we would like to bring this to you for possible mediation.
Okay, let me point out, I wrote this book quite a while ago, so if it's some obscure detail, I may forget, but go on.
Okay. Did Bob get a medal? Because people were very worried that Bob did not get a medal.
I believe that he may have gotten a medal, but he ate it.
See, I figured it was either he'd eaten it or the medal had been very carefully and somehow at range attached to his bucket.
I think it was probably held out at the end of a very long stick.
There it is.
Yeah.
Ursula, have you seen the bucket? Here.
Okay, so Wendy produced this for us. This is the Bob bucket.
Oh!
With little eyes and his little handle, and the chat has seen it as well.
Yes, because it was produced for Chungus.
Your beloved sourdough starter, yes.
Well, we've decided you're Chungus's godmother, so you need to deal with that now. This is your creation.
I shall do my best to make sure that Chungus grows up in the ways of goodness and rightness, which I think is what godparents are supposed to do.
It's either that or provide bail money. Just whichever one arrives first, honestly.
Or it's kind of like being a beloved aunt or uncle, right? You take them away for a week, then buy them all the toys the parents won't, feed them full of sugar, and send them home.
Because remember, it's okay to buy them the drum kit if you don't live in the same house.
It's true.
Yes.
The bail money is kind of more my speed than goodness and rightness anyway.
So, one of the things that you mentioned in the afterword was that Wizard's Guide has had quite a journey to publication.
Oh, Lord, did it ever.
When did you first write it, and how has it changed over the years?
I know that I first started writing it must have been late 2007 because I
Jesus.
knew I was writing a baking book and I bought a KitchenAid mixer. And
Uh-huh.
I remember that I had this in my apartment in 2007. And I think I made about three things with it before remembering that I don't know how to cook. And I certainly don't know how to bake. So I followed like three recipes and then was like, this is just an ass load of work. But I knew enough at that point that I was like, okay, I have all the texture words for what dough feels like, and that was really what I needed. And I had been able to write the KitchenAid off as a business expense, so there was that. Uh, so then I went to visit my parents that Christmas, and my stepfather made sourdough in front of me several times while I poked it and like wrote down things, and and then the KitchenAid went into storage until I moved in with my husband Kevin, who claimed it, and now it is his, and he loves it.
So,
And yeah, so 2007. This is the story of the book, not the KitchenAid mixer. Yes. So 2007, I finished it up a couple years later. I think I sold it to the children's book house that was publishing the Dragon Breath and the Hamster Princess books, and they sat on it for a long, 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 long time. I don't know how long at this point. I've lost track of the math, but at first they were like, they wanted it, I think, so that nobody else would buy it because they were trying to lock me in as an exclusive writer.
mhm.
And the the Dragon Breath books were doing really well, so they were like, okay, we got to buy all of her stuff so nobody else gets it, which is fine. I got money for it. The problem was they didn't know what to do with the Bread Wizard book. They were like, it would go through editors, and the editors would be like, does this need to be darker? And so they would try to make it darker, and then I would be like, okay, you've successfully replicated the Diary of Anne Frank with sourdough, and we're not doing it. If this gets published, Kirkus is going to like flay the flesh from my bones. And they were like, you're right, we have no idea what we were thinking. And then it would go in limbo for another year. And then they would come back and they would want all the dark stuff taken out. And also we should make Mona like 2 years younger or maybe 3. And so it just went through so many rewrites. And then eventually they were like, we actually have no idea what to do with this book. If you write us another book, we'll just call it even and you can have this one back, which is a thing that happens in publishing sometimes. They're like, this isn't working for us, write us a different book. So I wrote them a different book, which I think was Castle Hangdale, and they bought it, and everyone was happy. And then my agent tried to shop it around for a while to other houses who were all like, we have no idea what to do with this. It's an interesting thing, but we don't really know how to market it. And also, it's not Dragon Breath, which is the thing that I was known for. So finally, I was like, I have had enough. I need something to publish this summer. We are all making sourdough starters at home. This book's time has come. And asked my agent if she'd mind if I self-publish it. She's like, oh God, no, self-publish it. Great idea. Do it. Send me a copy. And my agent is very good about me self-pubbing things because she then goes on and represents, all the audio rights and the foreign rights and whatnot. So I always feel guilty when I'm like, this isn't selling, I need to do it. She's like, it's cool, I'll make money on the back end. So I put it out, and the response has been staggering. People have in 2007, and then 13 years later, apparently was the exact moment this book needed to land. So I'm not complaining.
It is, yeah. Yeah, I had no idea it was that old. That's incredible. And I think you're absolutely...
And the thing is, I changed so little.
Wow.
Like, I updated so little of it for 2020. Like, some things are super universal.
I think the thing about all of that surprises me the most is that people looked at it and went, you know what, this could be darker. this is a book where a comedic highlight is a 14-year-old and her traumatized 12-year-old sidekick climbing up a literal tower of shit. It just, oh my god.
They didn't have any problem with that. That wasn't the bit. They were like, she wasn't like worried enough when she was in the tower. I'm spoiling because I assume everyone on the Twitch has seen your read throughs that she wasn't worried enough about people hunting down magic users, and like, she should have more idea what's going on and be more worried about it. And I'm like, we're starting to get a little too many parallels to some stuff here that I'm not comfortable with, people.
Exactly. I mean, and I think it's especially surprising because having gone through the book so recently, that it hit very realistically. The whole kind of frog in a bucket and you gradually increase the temperature so it never notices the water's boiling. That whole
does not actually work, by the way, with real frogs. So just so you know.
Given our conversation before we went on air, I shall carefully not explore that further, but I will make a note of it. Thank you.
No, it's a great analogy for humans, but
yes.
Frogs jump. They're not dumb.
Like,
but go on. Yeah.
Screw this. What the hell, man?
Yeah.
But I love that everything is fine and nothing really changes in the city until suddenly everything changes drastically and awfully. And just the way that you gradually erode normality out from under Mona is so beautifully and horrifyingly well realized.
Just the moment where she finally gets to meet the Countess and confront her, and the Countess just collapses and starts crying herself.
Yes.
It's just like, oh crap.
And this is a tiny petty thing, I know, but I love that even at the end of the book, Mona is still a little bit like, fuck you. I was a 14-year-old kid, and I was more together than you were. What the hell, lady? And
that was one of the bits I added, and it was actually after a couple of beta readers had gone through and were like, at this point, she should be kicking the Duchess out of the tower for being a total failure as an adult and a ruler. And I'm like, I don't think I quite want to do that, but I can understand why. And then one of my copy editors is an anarchist and kept trying to change the name of the Duchess to, I think, unelected ruler, a despot or something. And yeah, I hit reject changes a lot on that one. But yeah, I had to add in the bit where I was like, sooner or later, you wouldn't just be grateful you'd helped. You'd be like, how did everyone else fail so badly?
Yes.
And I think that I had to be perhaps a little older or wiser or something to get there. I mean, I was 30 when I started this book, which seems so young now. But just the fact that sooner or later you're like, there should have been so many things before you got to me that would have stopped this. People frequently will tell me like something I've said on a podcast helped them decide to go get mental health treatment or something, and I'm always torn between I'm incredibly touched, I'm incredibly glad it helped, but oh my god, there should have been so much before I was the thing. Like, the system has failed you so badly if it was one weirdo on a podcast. Yeah, so
from one weirdo on a podcast to another, I'm very glad that happens, and I share that sentiment completely.
Yeah,
that kind of brings... Sorry, you go.
No, go.
That kind of brings me to one of the bits of the book, and I've been chewing this over all week, that has really, really stuck with me, and it's the pair of conversations that Mona has towards the end. The first with her uncle. And I love that her uncle is quiet and you don't really see him or hear him very much, especially because Aunt Tabitha is this magnificent powdered sugar covered Valkyrie of a woman who, will brook no nonsense. But when you find out his past and that he's a veteran and that he was in this horrible situation, which everyone knew was horrible, and they basically gave him a medal to shut him up. And the last conversation with Lord Ethan. And I that's just one of the neatest pieces of writing I've ever encountered, because I love Lord Ethan all the way through, because he's this fine and honest and upstanding, kind of Silverbolt looking guy. And then when Mona is absolutely realistic with him, he's just like, yeah, this was awful. I'm so sorry.
We have some fantasy casting in the chat. People would like to see Kate Mulgrew play the Duchess and Nathan Fillion play the Golden General.
Sorry, I didn't catch the second one.
Nathan Fillion?
Oh, I could do Nathan Fillion. I mean, I cast Chris Evans in my head for every good-looking part, so, that's just me.
Good-looking, fundamentally decent. Yeah.
Too young.
Looks good frowning, though.
Fair. Okay.
Kate Mulgrew as the Duchess is legit, though. Yeah. That's a good one.
That would be
I can definitely see that.
So, that kind of brings me on to the other thing which I wanted to talk
about.
Or
Carl Urban. Carl Urban can do, I am noble and tormented, and also I realize this is total bullshit really well.
You could have just stopped that sentence, Ursula. Like, Carl Urban can do blank.
Yes.
And then everyone can fill in their own little guess.
Carl Urban is also notable for being one of two actors who have a unique skill set. He is incredibly good at throwing grenades into a room and leaving. And it's him and Dan Stevens. If you've never seen a tiny little movie called The Guest, please do. It is one of my favorite films.
Keep talking. I just have to turn Ursula's volume down.
No worries. It's Dan Stevens as this veteran who shows up at the house of the family of someone who he served with. And he's just mustered out and he hasn't really got anywhere to go, and he wanted to come and pay his respects, and they suggest that he stay for a little while. And he helps out because the youngest son in the family is getting bullied, and the teenage daughter of the family is dating a drug dealer, and dad's having trouble at work. And after a while, all these problems start to go away. And there is a moment about 3/4 of the way through where Dan Stevens, a man who got his start on Downton Abbey, and as a result is known as Downton Stabby in many parts of the UK.
Mostly our house.
Walks into this diner, rolls 2 grenades in, looks around, and the look on his face is very much, this is on you, and turns and flounces out. And he and Carl Urban both have that skill, but yet Carl Urban is a slightly grubbier version of the Golden General, I could absolutely see.
And then he's the one, if we ever follow the Golden General in an actual battle.
Yeah, absolutely. Nathan Fillion.
Mind you,
Nathan Fillion on the
we just finished watching The Boys season 2 last night, and the series is not for everyone, but God, I would lick whiskey off that man's cheekbone.
Just the way he says malfeasance in the first season was delightful.
Oh,
and he is one of the only people who looks just as good after he's been in a bar fight. Like, just, blood and grime and everything. And he still looks just as good. You're like, damn.
He tenderizes very well.
Tenderizes.
This has been Ursula is Horny on Maine with Alistair Stewart.
Welcome.
Yeah. And?
Exactly. So, and amazingly, all of this actually leads back to one of the other things I wanted to talk about.
Wait, there's a word for it. It's the opposite of glow up. It's like grime up or something.
Yes.
Because people use it to describe The Witcher.
Yes, because
God, yeah.
Henry Cavill looks fantastic in a suit and looks even better when he's been dragged backwards through a hedge by 5 trolls and kicked in the face a couple of times.
Weirdly enough, Hugo Weaving is Elrond. Like, I realized that he's not attractive exactly, but the scene where, Elrond has clearly been in a battle, I think it's at the opening to the 2 towers, and is like, just looks like absolute hell, and I am like, hello.
The sequence which in my mind was instantly dubbed, Elrond is done with your mortal bullshit.
Yes.
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 In that, could we not? Yes, absolutely. Amazingly, all of this actually ties into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is...
Well done.
Thank you. Despite the kind of very fantastical elements of the book, I think the thing which I really responded to is incredibly realistic in a couple of really interesting ways. That there is the the way that war is dealt with. There's the fact that everything is the consequences are untidy. That people who perhaps should not be in their jobs, or as your anarchist copy editor would put it, their unelected positions, remain in those positions. And I'm really curious about two things: whether that was something which was a very deliberate part of the process, and whether you were perhaps laying seeds to potentially come back to it at a later date. Because I could see this being a world you'd spend more time in. And I'm curious whether...
It was, to a certain extent, I think I was telling the story from the point of view of Mona, and they're not going to let the 14-year-old run the country, and she wouldn't want to.
Of course.
So things like, you are completely unfit to rule, but you're what we've got, are more of a footnote. So I couldn't really, I didn't see her leading a uprising against the Duchess or something, even if the Duchess might have been kind of relieved. As for another one, I have toyed with the idea of a sequel, mostly because I just have one really horribly horrible scene that I so badly want to write, and I could never have done it while it was going through an actual kids book publisher because it's too grisly. But sure, I'll tell you guys, since
yes,
why
please.
not?
Hold on just a second. Are there any content warnings about this topic I should let people know? Or is it just generally...
oblique reference to animal cruelty.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I was thinking about, okay, you've got the bakery magic. And I was thinking what sort of people she would get to know once she was a little bit older, 16, 17, whatever. And I thought she would probably run into a confectioner's guild because, of course, you'd have people, who work with sugar and stuff like that. And ages and ages and ages ago, a very... a friend who is fortunately just as twisted as I am and I were chatting about this and started thinking, where would you get maple syrup in a magical world? Because all the trees have dryads in them and you're basically bleeding the dryads. And I was like, what we need here is the scene where she walks into a warehouse and it's just cages full of dryads being tapped for maple syrup like bears are for bile. And it will be so horrific that she's like, we are burning this place down once we get the dryads out. And that is the only scene I have from a sequel. And someday the rest of the book will coalesce around it. But anyway, so I'm a horror author under my in my day job now.
That is horrifying and brilliant. And
of course, the Confectioners Guild knows about this and is doing it because.
But that could be it. The whole point of the book, Ursula, is that they find out about this and they have to go rescue the dryads and burn the Confectioners.
Oh yeah.
I'm
anyway.
I am horrified and desperately want to read this. That is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So this is a book which features 12-story tall ambulatory gingerbread Jaegers, and because they kind of are.
They totally are. Where's the little guy? Here he is.
And small-ish evil gingerbread area denial weaponry. And I'm really curious as to how much fun you had, because I know you, and I know that your brain will go all the way to the end of an idea. And I'm curious, was there anything that Mona was going to bake up in that final quarter that you didn't quite have time to get to?
I was having ideas of maybe bombs made out of dough that had been over magic, sort of like the one bird explodes into basically steam and dough. And so I had some thoughts maybe, of her making basically bread bombs to drop on the enemy, but that. I couldn't really work it in. And I thought about having the one sort of dough slug really do some serious rampaging, but it was already starting to kind of stretch out, and I was, you can't do the heroine is at the end of her strength over and over and over again, or people stop believing that it was true the first time. So
yeah, it was.
I had a few.
And Anil in the chat has just said, interesting. So bread bombs. So like bombs then.
So
like Anil in the chat is very fond of puns, and it said so bread bombs. So more like bow then, like BAW, the evil. Yeah, see. You have some notes.
Well, the other thing I've always thought about a lot of this book is it would lend itself really, really well to a lot of different media, not just prose, but visual. I mean, we've spent the last 12 weeks taking it into audio, but have you thought about doing things like comics or animation? Because it's right on that sweet spot between kind of it is technically YA given the age of the protagonist, even though it has adult themes and YA has adult themes, but it would also, I mean, Spindle as the character would appeal to anybody who loves younger age animation like Steven Universe and the stuff.
Yes.
Have you thought about doing other sort of media with it?
I would absolutely love to if somebody else would like to actually would give me money and do it. I myself, animation is one of those things that I have avoided getting into because I don't have any free time as it is, and I fear what would happen. I tried to get into game design for a bit and lost about 2 years, and was like, I love this so much, but I would have either had to involve like an entire game studio, or I would sentence myself to being tech support for this game for the rest of my life. And the thought was just too dire. I was like, if there's a tech support staff, this is a great world. This is a delightful setup. It was all Ice Age stuffed animals. So you were hunting woolen mammoths, and everybody was like a little teddy bear or stuffed mouse or stuffed rat. And, and there were these monsters that ate stuffed animals coming to get you, and so you were in this little camp that was like the last refuge of stuffed humanity or whatever. And there were a bunch of stuffed sheep. Like there was a sheep shaman named Crazy Wool, who I just loved. He was a lot of fun to write. But and it was basically all the stuff I loved from the Clan of the Cave Bear books without the sex or the annoying personal relationships. It was all plants and animals and stuffed animals. And I did a lot with it. It was on Fallen London had a thing for a while where you could make your own universes. They eventually put it into read-only. I've still got all the files, but the thought of making a game I would have to do the tech support for just killed me. But hey, if anyone would like it, I have tons written, hundreds of hours.
Yeah, any indie game studios out there looking for, hot properties.
Now is the time.
It was really cute.
The chat is
and
very
also
about the idea of woolen mammoths.
Woolen mammoths. They had a sacred woolen mammoth burial ground where you would get to at one point and see all the mammoths dancing, and it was thousands of hours on that. I regret none of them, but other medium, I know I can keep up with writing, and on a good day I can almost keep up with a comic, but I couldn't do an open-ended comic again, especially not one where I had to draw so many humans. We had some problems early on when I was still with the publisher. They wanted me to illustrate it, and I was like, this is a lot of humans you want me to draw. I really hate drawing humans. I'm willing to try, but you get what you get. And it was eventually decided that perhaps it should go in another direction. So.
I remember a couple of years ago that the Atomic Robo creative team talking in perfect unison about how they really, really hated drawing horses. And literally the next line in the interview was, yeah, the next serial's a Western. Sorry about that.
No. Oh. I saw someone saying the worst things to draw are horses, and I had to jump in with and bicycles.
Oh God, yeah.
Bicycles are miserable to draw, but there's a
And
reason most of mine involve, small furry animals.
I
But
totally get.
writing is really easier. I can just say they stood in a cathedral and throw some adjectives at it. I don't have to draw the entire damn cathedral.
Exactly.
It's easier to edit than it is to create sometimes. So one of the questions that's come up in the chat, if I can detour really quick, is the chat came up with the name Crookies for referring to the evil little gingerbread man that Mona bakes.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
Fantastic. Everybody wanted to know what you thought of the description Cookies.
Oh, that's
I'm
great.
good.
Now I kind of wish I'd done it.
Okay, so consider it blessed, chat. There you go.
Yes, I will retroactively make it canon.
Fantastic.
Sweet. Okay, so
I can
here's
do
what
that.
we gotta do.
Go
We
for
gotta
it,
buy
canon.
enough copies of the book that it has to go to another print, and then when it goes to another print, you can change the name, right?
Were anybody else saying that, I would doubt your ability to do it.
Yeah, you know.
Mm-hmm. So, one of the kind of last things I wanted to talk about before we throw this open to the floor was this is an absolutely brilliantly realized heroic fantasy with absolutely the last cast you would expect to be in a heroic fantasy. And
Except Jacob, because Jacob is the man.
Yes. And I'm curious how did working in this field and in particular in this way, what did it give you that other genres don't? We'll come on to horror in a minute, but what about fantasy in particular do you really love writing?
That's a great question. Part of it is just I grew up reading it. I think the only thing I read that could not technically be called fantasy, and even that there's some wiggle room, would be Watership Down. But all the books I loved were fantasy. Oh, and Star Trek tie-in novels, oddly enough. But I think those probably fall into the sufficiently advanced technology, indistinguishable, etc. I like fantasy. I like being able to sort of set the rules. One of the problems with writing horror these days is basically you have to figure out how to get rid of the cell phone almost off the bat.
Yeah.
And okay, why don't they just Google how to kill the monster? Why don't fantasy? You don't have to worry about any of that. So, in addition, I mean, growing up with it, it was sort of a place I felt very comfortable with, but also just parts of it are easier. You don't expect them to be up on every bit of tech, and if I say we can't do X, people will just accept we can't do X. Whereas if I'm writing science fiction, they'll be like, you could have solved that with 2 wires and an arc welder. So
and a main deflector dish and a reverse polarity and a blah blah blah.
Yeah.
When in doubt, just reverse the polarity. Yes. So.
But Ursula,
Oh,
you did write a science fiction book in that, didn't you? A science fiction story.
I did.
Available now.
But I'll tell you the truth. It's actually a fairy tale retelling of Hansel and Gretel.
It's okay. We didn't hear.
It's okay. We didn't hear. Nobody heard it.
Oh, an escape pod? No, that's not Hansel and Gretel. An escape pod? That's just my love of heirloom, heritage livestock. But yeah, the other science fiction story I wrote was just Hansel and Gretel with robots.
Which is literally the only thing that would make it better.
I was never really that into robots. I don't know why. I wanted a dragon. I didn't want a robot.
See, I was always Team Robot, but then for the longest time, I was convinced I was straight up science fiction, and then people pointed out that I've hosted a horror podcast for over a decade, and I was like, oh, all those spaceships have something horrible on them. That's why I like them. Okay, that makes sense.
Obviously, Ursula, you need a robot
Well,
dragon. That's the way around.
Yeah.
There's such a bleed over with, horror and fantasy, though, too. It's like, if it's set in our world, but terrible supernatural things happen, it's horror. If it's set in a fantasy world and terrible supernatural things happen, even if they're the same things, it's dark fantasy. So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, here in the UK, they basically lump fantasy and horror together. It is dark fantasy and fantasy, which is why they're at the same convention every year.
Which brings us so neatly to your new book.
Look at that, a segue. Well done.
Ah.
I'm impressed.
Totes profesh.
Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, this is The Hollow Places. And if you're watching in America, that's the cover it is. The Titan UK cover is better. The Titan covers are just freaking amazeballs. I am going to kidnap their editor, their book designer, and keep her in the. I swear, not really. I like you. I don't have a basement, but just all the covers she has done for me have been amazing. Anyway, yes, this is a sort of retelling. I started writing horror. I retold fairy tales for a long time. Fairy tale retellings are easy. In so much as writing any book is easy because there's a certain fun to it, and you already have kind of a roadmap, and you can throw in little Easter eggs that people who know the original will see, and then they will feel smart. And the more you know about the original fairy tale, the more of the Easter eggs you can get. Usually, at least that's how I approach it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started for horror. I just started doing retellings of pulp horror. So my first book was Arthur Machen's The White People, and this one is Algernon Blackwood's The Willows. And there are a lot of Easter eggs to The Willows if you've read that. You don't have to read it to understand the story, but I make no bones about the fact that it is pastiche. I'm not trying to hide its origins at all. And it's basically, I liked the story. It stuck with me. There was something about it that actually either scared me or unsettled me enough that I wanted to poke at it a bit. But you gotta ask, nobody in the early pulps acts like a real person that I know would act. They're all either, heroic he-men or oblivious, but not in the ways that anyone I know is oblivious. I myself am frequently oblivious, but the story is never told from the point of view of, the bird watcher who doesn't notice all the tentacles because they're trying to get a look at the cerulean warbler or whatever. Although that would be a good story.
That would be, yeah.
That sounds like a Mary Sue or something.
Yeah, that's the problem. That would be more, fictionalized autobiography. People already accuse you.
Just cross that character with Murder, She Wrote.
Jessica Fletcher.
With Jessica Fletcher, and it's perfect. It's even pulpy. There we go.
Honestly, Murder, She Wrote only with cosmic horror would be amazing. Everywhere Jessica Fletcher goes, the veil between worlds is thin and Shoggoths are clawing through it. And she's like, oh, I saw this in Cabot Cove once. And
exactly. That's how it explains how she's actually the mass murderer who's going around doing all of the murdering.
Because she thins out reality and enables
and just
it.
kind of shuffles people through the veil for the Shoggoths. Keeps her hands clean.
Well, and I can totally see the Jessica Fletcher is the mass murderer argument because obviously it makes sense, but I think it would but she seems so nice all the time and also I really like Angela Lansbury. I would love it if she really was sort of cheerfully oblivious and she is just dragging this rented reality along behind her. And it's like, I also would love to write Miss Marple, investigating eldritch horror, where she sits there and says that, oh, I remember, in my village, we had a case like this and it was all fine. He was such a sweet boy till he started speaking in tongues and climbing on the ceiling. And then we had to cut his head off. You see so much of life in a small town. I mean, that would be amazing.
Please write that.
That is a goddamn audio drama podcast.
Please write that.
Waiting to happen. I'm writing that down. That's lovely. Oh my god, that's lovely.
Yeah. So many ideas, so little time. Anyway, so this one, the Hollow Places woman gets divorced, moves in with her uncle who runs a weird little roadside museum because she doesn't want to move in with her mother, which, many of us have been there. And her uncle's very sweet and kind of weird, but runs this, strange little museum. And I'm sure you have them in the UK too. They're like really obsessed with a couple of things. And, there's some bad taxidermy. There's a couple dozen random objects from around the world, most of which were probably made in Hong Kong. And some signs saying this is an authentic jackalope or whatever. I love museums like that. I've been to some. I love the ones that are really passionate about one thing, and then just had some leftover space and try to fill it. Like the Albuquerque Rattlesnake Museum is just wall to wall live rattlesnakes, which is great. I mean, obviously, lovingly curated collection. But then they had some space where they didn't have rattlesnakes, so they had like a shrine to Steve Irwin and a couple of Hopi Kachina dolls and a couple of random toys from the 80s and with labels. And I love stuff like that. The Cork Butter Museum is the most intensely focused museum on the history of butter and Kerrygold branding. Like you go in and they show you a film strip from like 1960 that's the sepia tone, grainy, all about how Kerrygold brand changed the future of Irish butter. And they play it like twice an hour. And then you wander around and they have a hunk of bog butter and they have some butter churns and anything you want to know about butter, they want to tell you. I love places like that.
Okay, Ursula, so what's the most wonderful obscure butter fact you learned?
Yes.
Yes. Supposedly you can keep the butter from going bad or rancid or whatever by burying the severed hand of an infant under the butter churn. And I was like, Jesus Christ, Ireland was hardcore. People took your butter seriously.
The next time you're in the UK, you need to spend some time at the Richard III Museum in York for two reasons. Firstly, its location is delightful. It is in 2 rooms on the city walls. And
Ooh.
secondly, it has the most flagrant, cheerful agenda I have ever seen a museum attempt to propagate. We're talking like actual mankind walking with dinosaurs, Christian pseudo-museum level agenda, because the person who set this up firmly believes that Richard III was innocent and murdered no one. So there are.
I've heard that theory put forward many times.
My dad, back when he was a teacher, went to an educational conference at York University at the same time. For some reason, that the head and sole member of the Richard III Society was innocent. Was also there, and he said we all ended up having lunch with him because we just felt so sorry for him. He was just by himself all the time. But all the like informational placards are full of things like murder with inverted commas around it. Lots of discussion of how the king had offended people and thus was his image had been warped. So yeah, that whole kind of small museum, big museum dreams thing is always really good value.
Oh yeah, the Mothman Museum in Point Pleasant is when the first time I went there, it was one room, and they didn't have enough Mothman to really fill one room, so they had props from the museum, the Mothman Prophecies, and I'm not talking like really impressive props. They had like, this is the bedspread that was in the hotel room that it was filmed in, and here is the pie slicer, that was in the diner that Richard Gere sat in. And they were trying really hard. And the guy who ran it was, when we walked in and, we're like, well, this is the thing we are looking at. The guy who ran it was deep in a intense conspiracy discussion with someone about Obama and the Temple of Nike. And I'm going, who knew the guy running the Mothman Museum would be a conspiracy theorist? Huh. And also they have the amazing Mothman statue, which is steel and quite large, and for some reason has an extraordinarily well rendered human butt that everyone comments on when they see it. They're like, Mothman got back, and it's like, yes, he does. The sculptor really went all out there. So, I must note that most Mothman sightings did not mention him even having legs. So there you go.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we expected tonight to go, isn't it?
Yeah, that is perfect. See, now I have the phrase Mothman badonkadonk going through my brain, and I kind of wish I didn't.
Oh, bless.
So anyway, books. I actually have one more question. And to answer Anil's question in the chat, yes, it would seem Mothman is in fact dummy thick. T. Kingfisher,
yeah.
your pseudonym, you use it in a really interesting way, and I was curious if we could talk a little bit about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's an open secret, so go for it.
How can I put this? Well, I think it was Kevin who said, well, with the hat on, you're T. Kingfisher, and with the hat off, you're Ursula. Is that basically it?
That's more or less it. It arose when I was doing a lot of kids' book stuff, actually, and I would have to give these talks at schools. They love school visits if you're a children's book author, because you go in with the book fair, you sell a bunch of books. That's the reason they send kid book authors on tour when they don't send any comparably earning adult authors on tour, because there's like built-in sales audience. Mm-hmm. So, and before every single talk, and I am not to put too fine a point upon it, very uncomfortable with kids. I was an only child. I've never babysat anyone. I have two stepsons, but they are like 20 and 18 now. And so it's, I'm not what you'd call good with kids. I'm terrified of them, actually. So being sent to all of these school visits was, I would spend like 5 minutes in the car beforehand going, don't say fuck, don't say fuck, don't say fuck. And I sort of got this like almost a talisman. I got this like super art teacher necklace. Like it was called art teacher necklace. And it is the most hippie ass beads and weird colors necklace. And I would put that on, and I'm like, while I am wearing this, I am Ursula Vernon, children's book author, who does not swear. And when I have it on, I am at work. And when I take it off, which was usually at the airport once the tour was done, then I was like, okay, now I can go to the bar and drink until my flight gets in. And I would no longer be children's book author. And it worked pretty well to keep me from swearing. But then you can't write adult stuff if you're a children's book author without, like you can start writing adult stuff and then become a children's book author. Mm-hmm. That's okay. But you can't go the other way, really. And it's much harder if you're a woman. I think Clive Barker can get away with it. Not everyone assumes that anything Clive Barker writes will be the thief of always. But if you're known basically for writing Hamster Princess, and then you're like, yes, I have this story where the dryads are being drained of maple syrup in cages, you don't necessarily want small children to be grabbing that. So pen name was where it was at. And I needed like the differentiation. So the first time I had to do a public appearance as T. Kingfisher, basically, I grabbed the hat. In fact, it might have been my husband's hat, and put it on. And it is, in fact, Indiana Jones replica fedora from Raiders of the Lost Ark. So,
brilliant.
Yes,
Absolutely
and
brilliant.
yeah, so when I have it on, I am T. Kingfisher.
Fantastic.
If I ever wear it and the children's book necklace at the same time, I believe my head will explode.
Or you will ascend to your final form.
Oh, God. I don't know what that would be.
It would be like the most grim Babysitter's Club books ever.
And also the most metal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Metal Babysitter's Club books. That could happen.
So, what
You
you
know,
working?
I've never actually read a Babysitter's Club book.
Okay, Ursula, I know what I
I
get
wasn't.
for Christmas. You're welcome.
Woo! Because of the babysitting, I was like, I'm not reading books about babysitting. I don't babysit. No one in their right mind would hand me a child. At one point in my college years, a my drug dealer, don't do drugs, kids, burst through the door holding his infant son, looked at me, turned to my then boyfriend, and said, "James, I need you to watch the kid." And I was like, "That's right. You just keep going." So yeah.
Oh, I that is just glorious. That's amazing. It reminds
Incidentally, James was like, "Dude, I do not feel comfortable with this." No, so but
it reminds me of I forget which one it's in, but there's an Anthony Bourdain book where a chapter opens with "It's 3:30 and my phone is ringing." And he picks the phone up, and this voice on the other end goes, "It's the beast, man. You gotta help me. You gotta feed the beast." And it turns out that the restaurant he was running at this point had a brilliant and profoundly erratic baker who had an oil drum sized starter that he loved more than King Bob, that he loved more than life itself.
wow.
But for the small fact that he was also a massive crackhead and kept forgetting to do things like show up for work. So he went off on holiday for a fortnight, completely, and he referred to it as the Beast, and completely forgot to feed the Beast for a week. And then in a panic, rung Bourdain and had him basically go and empty a kilogram of flour into this thing to wake it back up. And he basically said, yeah, he said, I'm pretty sure it's still alive somewhere.
Yeah, of course.
It's
being used as siege defense weapon.
Exactly. Exactly.
I think once you can keep it in an oil drum, you get to call it the beast.
Yeah, seriously.
So, what are you working on at the moment? What's coming up next for you?
Oh Lord, the next book that will probably be out is, God willing, another of my fantasy romances, which is the sequel to this one. This is hopefully, yeah, Paladin's Grace. The sequel is coming out, which I think is called Paladin's Strength, and it is a. I say they're fluffy romances. Everyone else says that there's way too many severed heads and mutilations for that. I say, if the sexy lead can't save you from a severed head, what good is he? And anyway, the point is they are probably only fluffy in my mind. I am told they're sort of horrific dark fantasy with romance in to normal people. But anyway, yes, this follows a group, an order of paladins whose god was killed, and they all went stark raving bonkers when that happened because there was a god inside their head who was brutally murdered. So they ran amok and started killing people, and now they're all just extremely depressed, and a bunch of them like lit the temple on fire. And anyway, so the ones who have survived this whole experience have terrible PTSD and are just trying to do good before they eventually die of despair. And so yeah, that was my romantic lead, and yeah. So
2020, the book.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I'm aware that appearances is a very movable feast in the year of our Lord 2020. But do you have any public appearances coming up before the end of the year? Doing any conventions or readings or
conventions?
Not this year. I think I'll be at BosCon next year, virtually, and I am hoping still that we will have a vaccine by then, and I will actually be attending Crossings Con, which I believe is in Canada. But other than that, things are still flexible. A lot of things I may actually have next year that I was supposed to have this year, and they got delayed, and now everything is scrambled, and I'm forgetting them at the moment. I had people approaching me for 2022, and I was like, that would have worked, except that everyone is postponed, so now all of my 2021 is coming due, and it's in person, probably not for a while, though.
Understood.
Understand. And how's the garden?
Yeah.
It's starting to hit fall, so it's in the kind of ragged, lots of leaves, kind of chilly stage. Lots of things are still blooming because it hasn't frozen yet. So I go out occasionally, but it's so cold that I don't want to like do a lot. But stuff is still blooming, so then I feel guilty. Occasionally, I'll find a bee, and I'm like, "Bee, why are you still awake? It's getting down to 40 at night."
Yeah, I think we're gonna have our first frost tonight. At least it sure looks like it out on the railings tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've moved a bunch of my tender plants sort of up by the house to try to overwinter them. But I did that like 2 weeks ago, and then it warmed up to 70 again. So now they're all just sitting there and putting out new growth. And I'm like, no, guys, you were supposed to be calming down.
No, go to sleep.
Kevin says it was freezing last night, so.
The garden is unaware of it. We're in a warm pocket here, so like microclimate is pretty warm. So I mean, the tomatoes still have flowers on them, and I'm like, tomatoes, what are you thinking? And they're all, we can't stop. You won't stop us. It's the super hardy like grape tomato called Coyote from Mexico that is, you plant one and it just eats the entire tomato patch and starts making inroads on everything else. And you're like, this is amazing, and I love it, but why did I plant 4? So.
You see, you say 4 tomato plants. I hear nascent Triffid army. And I can think of no one on earth who deserves a Triffid army more.
Aw, that's sweet. I honestly, I feel like someone who would actually, do something with it would be good. I would just be like, I'm so proud of you. Let me have tomatoes. People who would have them like march on government installations or something would probably be better served by them.
So we have a question in the chat, if that's okay, Ursula.
Absolutely.
What made you choose the bird name for T. Kingfisher, and what does the T stand for, if anything?
Kingfishers are my favorite bird, but part of it was Ursula K. Le Guin wrote under a pen name once as UK Le Guin for Playboy, because they said that the name Ursula, being obviously female, would freak people out, by which they meant the dudes reading Playboy. And she was like, what do you think the initials stand for? Ulysses Kingfisher? And so since I was also an Ursula using a pen name, it kind of came together. And the T stands for the, or maybe Terrence. I don't know.
It's like this. I'm surprised you don't say Tiberius.
Oh, Tiberius is good.
Tiberius Kirk. Tiberius Kingfisher has a nice name.
Oh, wow, yeah. I can totally do that.
There we are, solving the problem. If you're all right hanging about for a little bit, we'll see if there are any more questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Sure.
I will bang that. It was quick, vamp.
Vamp?
Yeah, we have a.
You too, vamp. Have a chat about that while we ask for any other questions.
So, arguably the most important question you'll be asked this year: how are the kittens?
The kittens are very good. They're getting big. For those who don't know, about almost 6 months ago now, like 5 months ago and some change, our tenant farmer shepherd showed up in the hall with a kitten and was like, Kevin, I have a kitten and I will find a home for it. I just need it to be here for a little bit. And Kevin, who is, St. Francis of North Carolina, was like just looking at the kitten going, my kitten, talking to it, and the kitten falls asleep on. Oh, hey, and speaking of, here is Hobbs, the kitten in question. Yeah. And Hobbs has gotten very big. Yes, you have. So Kevin immediately fell in love, and but there were like 5 kittens in the litter. So the next day, Shep shoves a hand into the master bedroom with a kitten on it and is like, here, this is for your niece. She needs a kitten. And then more kittens just kept showing up as Shep would catch them, because the mother cat at that point was really done with having kittens at all. Was like, this is a lot. I think they were about a month old at that point. So they were starting to get into everything, and she was just done. So strange person walks up and is like, here is a tin of wet cat food. Let me take a kitten. And the mother cat's like, this is a great trade. Do it again. So we wound up with 5 kittens, and then 1 did go to Kevin's niece, and 2 more found homes. And then we had Hobbs and Shaw, named after the Fast and the Furious.
Of course.
And because which Vin Diesel was not in, because Vin Diesel's torso is also one of my favorite actors, but
it has
still
such
a fun
range.
movie. It does. Really, it can be shaved or hairy.
Yes, often tattooed.
Another question we have in the chat is, how does it feel to know you made Alistair cry so hard he got a nosebleed during the stream reading Molly's death?
I did not know you cried so hard you got a nosebleed.
Yes, oh, I did. Yes.
Oh my goodness, I am torn. I feel a weird combination of horror and pride.
Embrace the pride.
I never want to make people sad, but there's also a small malicious part of me that is like, yes. I finally have you by the short hairs, and now I will pull. Yeah.
It was quite a moment. I think everybody on the stream was just in floods of tears, like the entire. And I will be fair, I broke up the chapter for maximum emotional impact.
Oh, you're cruel. I think you almost get that more when you're doing it over the course of like a couple of weeks or something, because people are sort of living with the story in their heads more than if they just sit down and read it all the way through. I know when I did Digger, there's, without spoilering, there is one character death that was about 7 years coming, and I built up to it and was like, oh yeah, I'm either going to get a lot of hate mail, or everyone is going to be like, yes, this was correct, and it was fine. And my dear friend Brooke, who also did webcomics, was like, oh honey, then you remembered it was the internet, and you'd have to live in my basement, didn't you? Everyone was very nice about it.
Here's a question. Were the scenes in Hollow Places with the diary from the soldier intended to remind us of Annihilation by Vandermeer, or was it just coincidence?
It was purely coincidence. I actually did not read Annihilation till after I had read after I had almost finished the Hollow Places. I actually picked up Annihilation on the flight home from. I had to arrange a funeral. It was all very grim, but I also had to deliver this damn book, so and they would have given me more time, but it was nice to have something to think about that wasn't funeral. So I would like just work until noon on the Hollow Places, and then spend like 5 or 6 hours doing paperwork and getting dudes' affairs in order, because my stepfather thought wills were something that happened to other people, and if I could raise him from the dead, I would punch him in the head for that. Anyway, neither here nor there. Write a will, people. And then on the plane back, I'm like, oh, I hear this Annihilation thing is good. I'll read that, and went through and read it, and a lot of it I was like, God damn it. Oh man. God damn it. All right. I really hope they let me get away with that book now. Damn it. Yeah, so it wasn't at the time. It was just one of those coincidences. Another one, speaking of Wizard's Guide, I think the second Shrek movie has a giant gingerbread man that they attack a castle with. And I had already written Wizard's Guide, and it was still in limbo at that point. And I looked at it and I'm like, oh, hell. I'm actually glad that it took so long to come out, so it wasn't fresh in people's minds then. But this happens, I think, to writers all the time.
You did it better.
Next question is, was it a conscious decision to make all the protagonists in your stories female? Also, what's your opinion on the heritage breed of
guinea hogs?
Guinea hogs. You know, I don't know much about guinea hogs. Pigs, I don't deal with pigs. One of the kindest, sweetest human beings I know, who who keeps yaks, and every animal on earth loves her, even ones that hate everybody. Like, she looked into keeping cassowaries once. and she would have had the only cassowaries who loved humans on Earth. She kept pigs, and she wanted to love pigs, and she admired them for all of their amazing traits, which I also admire them. They're extremely intelligent and adaptable and everything else. And after about a year of pig keeping, she was like, I hate them so much.
Oh no.
I they're just awful, awful animals. And she was keeping some kind of island hog. They're an interesting one, but and she tried to love them, and finally she was like, one day I think they had broken the waterer for the third time. They had flooded the farmyard, and it was 20 below because she was in Minnesota, and so it was just this sheet of glaze ice over the entire farmyard. And she was like, we are slaughtering hogs today, all of them. And I am amazed she lasted as long as she did. I don't know anyone really who has kept them who is terribly fond of them most of the time. As individuals, they can apparently be lovely. You get a bunch of them together, and they are cunning and not great. Anyway, all the characters being female. I think part of it is that with the hollow places and twisted ones, since I'm doing first person narration, it's a little easier for me to do to be in another woman's head, I think. I mean, they all kind of sound like me anyway, let's be honest. But I can do male point of view. Also, I had just come off of 11 Dragon Breath books, which are all male protagonists, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm done. I really, really want to write some boob jokes for once. And the romances, you basically alter point of view between the two. So if it's a straight romance, you get equal time. Hopefully, the third Paladin's Grace book will have two male protagonists. So we'll see more male characters than that.
Cool.
Do we have time for just one last one?
I'm not going anywhere.
Okay. There was a question about. Hang on, let me find it. A lot of it says a lot of your characters are very clearly you or in your voice. How do you approach going about writing characters that are very not you? And does it feel weird?
If I ever figure it out, I'll let you know. Yeah, most of my characters devolve into me after a point. I try not to, but like they're always going to have a sense of humor. And so the best I can usually manage is me but traumatized, me but terrible thing is happening, me but serial killer, me but whatever. That
makes
maybe forget that serial killer one. Anyway,
stricken from the record. Ursula, this has been a
so
delight.
yeah, I can do it for a short story. It's a lot harder for a whole book where I have to spend all this time with the character, and yeah. Fortunately, you people keep reading even though they all sound like me, which I appreciate. Sooner or later, you'll figure out that they're always all going to sound like me, and then well. It was nice while it lasted.
I don't mean to alarm you, but I think the fact that they sound like you is one of the reasons people keep reading them.
Yay!
In which case, you're on a winner. Woo! Ursula, this has been a delight. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you so much for just being this incredible paragon of land-based positivity and endless fount of amazing fiction. You are an inspiration, and it is an honor to be your friend and to get a chance to hang out with you. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. It's always a delight to hang out with you guys. I hope someday we will get to do it in person again.
I'm sure we will.
In the distant future.
I'm sure we will. And shall we?
And you're amazingly talented and do lots of amazing stuff. And with the organizational skills I lack, but admire in others.
You see, I have none of the organizational skills, but Marguerite does. So I mostly just hide behind her and go, yeah, you better not come back anytime something needs to be organized. And so far it's worked. And I just said all of that out loud. So we'll wrap up there, I think.
Right. Why don't you let the stream know we're going to take a little short break and say goodbye to Ursula, and we'll be back in a couple minutes.
We are going to take a couple of minutes and say goodbye to Ursula, and then we'll be back, folks. We'll see you shortly.